Welcome to the course Guidelines for Dashboard Design. Lesson 4 focuses on use of color. Ultimately, color is one of the most important elements that we have to manage when designing a dashboard. This is because color is not a decorative element in dashboards. It is, above all, an element that we use to communicate. Regarding the use of color, first we can see a black and white graph. There is not much to say in terms of color, and it represents types of baseball pitching, fastball, and other kinds of situations. And each point represents one of those pitches. And by means of these displays, we cannot know much more about it than the type of pitching that was made on each occasion. But when we add this last graph, the one below, we see how the use of color allows us to provide an additional dimension to the data we are representing. In this case, we can see that the same distribution shown above is displayed below, but color represents the pitching speed. And in this case, we can see that fastballs have a higher average speed than, for example, a slider or some of the other kinds of pitching mentioned here. Color is well used here. Why? Because an additional dimension has been added to the display of data. As stated before, the use of color must have a meaning when it is used. It is not decorative, it is aimed at communicating data. As we all know, color has a meaning by its very nature. When you think about a happy color, you think of red or yellow. If you think about a sad color, you think of black, gray. There are certain characteristics assigned to colors. For example, here we see 5 kinds of very natural classifications of colors that most of us have seen at some point. There are earth tones that are soft shades, which have a relaxing effect. When we see those colors, we feel calm. Fresh colors are soothing, serene. They also help to achieve certain degrees of tranquility, while increasingly intense colors tell us that the stronger the color is, the more important the view data is. And so our attention will tend to find that intense color because we know that there is something more important there. Unnatural colors alarm us, disturb us, and make us feel nervous. When red or dark yellow is used, we say that something is happening. They catch our attention immediately and we focus on what is being displayed by that color. Generally, these kinds of colors are used in caution or emergency situations. Warm colors are optimistic, active, and vivid. They make us feel good. That is more or less part of their meaning. So, when we decide to use a color, we must use those that already have a meaning, and we must not try to give it a new meaning to an already existing color. For example, if we want to use the colors of a traffic light, for sure we will use red for an alarming or negative situation, green for a positive one, and yellow for an intermediate level. We are neither going to do it the other way around, nor use 3 colors that do not have that meaning in people's minds. When we manage colors in a display, especially when we want to represent different levels of intensity, we use scales, and there are 3 types of scales. Sequential, colors are arranged in a descending shade order. This means that a lighter color indicates weakness, and a stronger color indicates greater intensity or presence of a phenomenon we are showing. Also, colors can be used in a diverging scale in which 2 sequential schemes, 2 general opposing colors, span from the middle towards the ends. So in this example, we can see blue and a brownish color, and where they meet at the intersection, it's almost white. So we know they are diverging. And in relation to the categorical scale, we use different colors, but we make sure that there is a strong contrast between a color and the color next to it. For example, the first 2 columns are light blue, but one is very pale and the other very bright. Then it goes from very pale to very bright green and so on with different colors. When using colors, it is also important not to make the people's brain work. There is an easy way to communicate and there is a more difficult way to communicate. In the first circle, there are 2 colors similar to orange, and it could take more effort for a user to understand where one color ends and where the other one begins. Alternatively, when using complementary colors, like the circle in the middle where the top part is orange and the bottom is light blue, it is very easy to distinguish which area belongs to a color and which area belongs to the other one. Finally, in the last circle where there are two shades of light blue, again it takes a little more effort to differentiate one area from the other. So the idea is, let's make it easy for the user. Let's use complementary colors so that sight communicates immediately and the brain does not have to work. Colors may also use contrast to highlight a result. In this case, the same figure is displayed 3 times. In the first figure, there is a very dark black figure to represent a wolf. In the next one, 2 contrasting colors are used, purple and yellow. And in the last one, there is only 1 tone. It is much more difficult to locate the shape of the animal in this figure than in this one, and especially it is totally different from the one above. In the first figure, it is immediately clear where the animal is located. In the other areas, more effort is required. Again, let's use that kind of contrast to make it easier for people to understand what we are representing. Finally, let's talk about a topic we mentioned in the dashboard conceptualization course. This is the relationship between data and ink. When we design the elements of a dashboard, we must ensure that most of the ink used in the visualization is focused on representing the data and not on decorating it. Let's take this first graphic as an example. There are a number of unnecessary elements that do not facilitate nor help to understand the data. The grid in the background, the light blue background, only makes it harder to differentiate the area of the data from the contour area, the same as in the previous case of the wolf. In this first example, we can see that if we remove the grid, the view is much more clearer in the second version. And if we remove the light blue background, it is even easier to identify where the data bars are. In the following version, we can see how we continue cleaning the figure to remove some horizontal lines it had. And in the 5th version, we can see that these horizontal lines that were there before to get closer to the value of the bar now are replaced by a white line that actually removes color where the line is, so that the display can be seen, and the final version is a very clean version, where the ink is already being used to represent the data without any unnecessary decoration. The borders are no longer there, for example. It got cleaner by removing the box, etc. Until we get to the last version, which is very clean, very legible, where the ink is used for the item of data. Summing up, we stress the fact that color must be used only if it provides an additional meaning to the visualization we have. On the other hand, when using a color, the meaning that that color has for people in their minds should be considered, and the importance of using contrast to highlight data that is important, relevant, with more meaning in the context than what we are showing.